All right. Good evening, everyone. It's great to be here once again. I had to look over the screen. So we got two tonight, or today, however, wherever you are and watching. We got Matthew chapter 8 and Matthew chapter 9 that we're going to be going through. I'm going to keep down my monologue as much as possible, but I will say this. I am thankful and I am grateful, and I always am, that you take your time to tune in, and I appreciate that. Some may glean something from this. Some might be mad at me. I don't know. But I think it's important for those who are King James Bible believing Christians who believe in the King James, and when they're confronted, like I've said before, with the fact of you're not reading the 1611, it's been revised. Well, that's why I made these. Um, to be honest with you, if someone doesn't like this video, they clearly are anti King James. I'm going to say that right now. If they don't like this video, they don't have to hit the like button. I'm just saying, if they actually don't like it, hit the dislike button. I'd have to say they've got either a personal issue with me, which is fine, but at the same time, they're against the King James Bible and what I'm putting out here, what is obvious from the scriptures. So I appreciate your time as always. Let's jump right into it. I'm gonna pull up here. Let me see. Pull that down. Add that to the stage. All right. Let's go right here. There we go. All right. In chapter 8, it's got 34 verses, 783 words, 140 spelling errors, 24 capitalization issues, I should say, for 164 changes. So let's go through a little bit of this. I'm going to try to, I don't want to say speed through it, but we'll get through this. We see the same words as normal. Down, it's the same thing. Mountain, a lot of these are the same thing as you're always going to see. A lot of these changes are the same changes that have been going on for a while, or these errors that they like to point out, which we all know is not exactly errors. We know the time frame, we know spelling, we know all that. So scholars are always misleading people. Even non-scholars that are in other Bibles say it's way easier to read the ESV and the NIV. Number one, it's not just a spelling issue. They change context of a lot of things, but I want King James Bible believing Christians to be comfortable and knowing that even though they believe in their hearts they have the right Bible, which I absolutely agree with, these are the changes, and such a big change that they're concerned about. All right, we see clean as usual. Jesus, we got the J. We know why there's an I in the J. If you've watched my videos, we've gone through this. You got 12 of those changes. Unto 17 times that's changed here from the V to the U, which again, we know V and U in that time frame of the wasn't a widespread use of the U. It wasn't an error. They didn't accidentally put the V in there. Exactly like I said this the other day about the I was at the coin store, and you probably heard the story before, and I'll repeat again. Woman thought she had an error coin when she brought it into the coin deal and said, "Hey, look, on this coin, it's got a V where it should be a U in the unto." And the non-Christian coin dealer said, "Ma'am, that's what they did then. They didn't have the U in full use." Even he knew, and he's no scholar. He's a nice guy. I'm just saying he's not a scholar. All right, so we have 17 changes here. We have testimony. Again, you can see these words. I'm going to slowly go through them, so if you want to pause in your own time, you can do so. A lot of these words are obvious when you look at them, what they are. Again, with the V and the U, I mean, my sons know that. He goes, oh, that's because they've read the King James. I know. Yeah, they're 10 and 13, and they know. So therefore, as an adult, you got this. You can do this. All right. Having soldiers. And I'm not saying that to insult anybody. I'm really not. What's insulting is those who say that you can't understand it. Those are the ones that are insulting you. All right. And I know there's a lot of crazy people out there who claim to be King James, and they're just shooting from the hip and wild at the mouth, and you're not going to get that here. All right. And Jacob is another example here with the I instead of the J. A lot of these E's at the end. Remember, kingdom has got an E at the end of it. You got darkness over here, although you got two E's, but you got an E right here at the end. Got an E in the middle. Believed, got two in there. Look at hour, same thing. Let's see, fever. Well, it's not gonna. All right, himself. Commandment. Again, we got the commandment. Commandment. There's a U in there. Although if I looked at this briefly, I'd have said commandment, and then I would have to look at him like, oh wait, that doesn't say commandment. Wait a minute, what does that say? Command. It does say commandment because then the U would have made sense to them. It would have just made sense. And commandment. Commandment. That's just the way they speak. Certain with the E at the end. Air right here. That's how they would have spelled it back. It's just the same things over and over again. You see the same things. A lot of words in here, like I said. Shall be, the shall be a compound word, which is not really. Let's go back up here. And like I said, out of 140, 783 words. And you're going to get 164 changes. When again, you're going to see the difference just here, the 12 and the 17 by itself. All right. Get down here. Calm. There's another easy one. Let's see. Heard, cried, pass. So you have all these in here. And this is where you'll finally get an error. You'll finally get an error. So chapter 8, mark it down. Matthew chapter 8 is the first error, actual error that you're going to, in my opinion, find is before. The E is missing. Now, I believe it's an error. I do believe that. I don't think they said they would have pronounced before like that, but they might have. I'd have to see more evidence of that, that they would have spoke like that, and it's possible. But right now, I'm going to consider that an error. I'm just going to give the benefit of the doubt for the scholars that they would have got this one as an error. They get one. They win a prize. They get one. And then we get the first word change, ye to the. That does happen. That happens a few times. But ironically, you're going to find that the would have been in a Tyndale. I think it's a Tyndale. The would have been in the Tyndale. It would not have been ye. So you can decide how you feel about that. Oh, but inspiration. Calm down. We're not talking about that type of stuff right now. All right, now let's get into the capitals. 1611, 2025 again. Mountain, we see how it was capitalized in the 1611, but it was lowercase. Centurion was lowercase. East and West, lowercase again. Even, not only was it lowercase, obviously we know the U and the V, but we know that. Prophet, very often you'll see prophet capitalized in 1611 and then lowercase in the King James. Scribe, same thing. Foxes, son, you'll see how it's double N, but then it's capitalized the way it should be, in my opinion. Disciples, lowercase disciples. Jesus, we see that again, capitalization. This is not part of the spelling errors above as I and J. I kept this particularly the same and different because of the capitalization. So I counted it as two different ways. All right, now we get to, like we said before, scholars, 783 words, 164 errors, 20.9%. So we get 20.9% of chapter 8 has errors in it. But in reality, when you cut down the multiple letters, you can look right above right there. You see C and C 4 times as a capital, but you see it's changed 4 times. Those aren't 4 errors. It's one word. It's not 4 words. I'm not going to count as 4 different errors. It's one word. They didn't make a mistake and spell C 4 different ways. That's silliness to count it that way. So 75 of these quote-unquote errors, you cut that down because we talked about, I think it was unto 17 times. Let's go back up here. All right. 17, you see Jesus 12 times. 17 times for unto. That's what you get. You get multiples of the same word. I'm sorry. I'm not counting them like that. That's silly. That's like puffing up the COVID numbers. That's what they did back then. All right. Next step, we minus the capitals that have no effect. Oh, okay. I thought I didn't have the J's here. Next step, you minus the capitals that have no effect on doctrine or the reading difficulty. It doesn't affect anything. So you take those 13 out, you get 62. Now you're down to 7.9% error. Next step, you take the letter J for obvious reasons. We've talked about that. And you take out 2. I think it was Jesus and John in chapter 8, if I remember correctly. And now you're down to 60, which is 6.2%. Next step, you go to phonetics. Phonetics. Now, you take away 49 of those words because 49 of those words are just phonetically spelling. We talked about this point. Need with an E at the end, old with the E at the end, meekness with the E at the end. A commonplace happens all the time, but you can actually pronounce the word, not because you recognize it and it's obvious what it is. You recognize it because you sound it out. That's all, and that's what they would have done, like commandment. Unprofessional drink of water. I got you. All right. And when you do that, you take those 49, you got 11 left. You got 0.014% error and issues. And as we see here, there were only 2 real changes. The one word that was changed from ye to the, one error that was changed from behold, and it should have been behold. And that's wrong. I apologize. That should be before. It was before, and then with before and I don't know why I would behold. I apologize for that. Hey, see how you can make a mistake? You know, you transcribe this, and you might get something wrong. You might miss something. There you go. I do this by hand. I don't tally them up I don't print or type them into the computer, look them up, drag them over and from some website. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Somebody doesn't. Let's do it paper, word by word by word. I like to know how it felt a little bit. I won't know exactly how it feels in their day, but I get the sense of how it felt by doing it that way. All right. So that's 2 real changes out of that whole thing. So you got, again, a 0.014% readability issue. Now, 1611, like we said, my 10-year-old. On this one, I did bring him in on this one. I was able to go through these words with them during the daytime. So Joshua, as you know, is 10. Alex is 13 years old. Those of you who follow me. Joshua got 81.3% of it right when he read the words. He just looked at them, read the words all the way down. Obviously, phonetically, he said a lot of things, so that was easy. 90.6 for Alex. He dipped from that last time, but that's okay. Still over 90% and over 81%. But if you would have taken them, picked them up, and plopped them back down at that time frame, they would have been 100%. Because they would have known what B and U was, J, and so forth. They would know all that. And I think that's now a blank page. I don't know why there's a big blank page underneath it. All right, so that concludes Chapter 8. So as you can see, Chapter 8, you finally get your 2 real changes. The one word being ye to the, and before to, and I can't type it because this is a PDF file. So I have to go back and change it afterwards, which I will. But before was actually BEFOR, and then it would have had E correctly. So that's your big changes. Oh no. So that means basically 2 words. 2 words. 2 words. There we go. Out of 783. I can't even do the math. What's that? 781 out of 783 words and not a problem. So that's 2. Wow. I can't even do the math on that one. It's like 0.5%. Well, the math is right here, actually. 0.014%. Just saying. As an adult, you can do that. All right. Let's hop into Chapter 9. Matthew chapter 9. Here we go. Let's bring it nice and big here. We have 38 verses, 836 words, 158 spelling issues, 9 capitalization issues for a complete total of 167 changes. Wait, right off the bat, look at what we got here. He to he, 19 times. But again, people who want to puff up their numbers like scholars to make it look more dramatic and make it more look as if there's more errors than there actually are, they'll tell you 19. They'll say, did you know in just the first 5 chapters there was 19? Give me a break. All right, then we get entered down here. We got a lot of same things. Own, you got city, which you can tell what that is right when you look at it. It's phonetic anyways. Sick, palsy. Here we go with Jesus 13 times and unto 14 times. Perfect examples. But they would have known that the V was a U back then. So my boys know what it is. If you can, I'm sorry, but if you can teach a 10-year-old and 13-year-old, you could teach an adult, and I don't think it's going to take that long. Listen, I'm not saying everybody has to run and start reading the 1611. I'll read the 1611. I'll read the King James Bible. Not an issue to me. Although I will say the King James the 1611 is a little harder for me to read now because the one I have, the print is small, so I have a hard time. So I'll probably eventually get a larger facsimile or a larger copy. Maybe that big, the big 411, 411, the 400th anniversary one there of the huge giant one, maybe. We'll see. All right. Going through the same thing. And my boys know looking at that's and. Back then, they would have known and means and. Not a problem. Not an issue. So it's not hard to figure out. Physician. I'll be honest with you. I never noticed physician was spelt this way until I went through this. I never picked up on it in the 1611. I just didn't notice it. But again, it's phonetically just looks like physician. It looks the way it's spelled. There's John again. Bridegroom. I can see that as being a problem. Hey, listen, I'll give the scholars a little grace here. I'm like, okay, I can see how somebody might say bridegroom if they read that instead of bridegroom. I'll give it to you. Not a problem here. I don't have an issue with that. It's a very small, tiny bit of this whole thing. Like made, scorn. Even though it's a Y, again, phonetics, made. So much is made of all these supposed errors and changes and difficulties when it's a very small percentage in the New Testament. Now, the Old Testament obviously will have a different approach or different words. There's going to be a lot of archaic words, I would say, but we're going to talk about those and how they can be easily understood in the bigger picture. Kingdom. Again, a lot of these words, the same thing. It's just you got. Remember when we were talking about the E at the end? Sheep. Again, you're not going to say sheepy. You're not going to say sicknessy, kingdomy, sceney. Come on. I know it sounds like I'm trying to mock people. I'm really not. I'm just. Though it is those in the elitists, so to speak, those who, in my opinion, who have over inundated themselves with scholarship or scholarly attributes and trying to attain some higher level of knowledge as the Greeks did, over there with Socrates and Plato and so on, whether it be the pre-Socratic era or after that or whoever it may be, they're always seeking the knowledge of which they don't need, which doesn't serve them. I'll tell you what, they better stop reading the Odyssey by Homer. They can't be reading that anymore. I wouldn't read Cosmology by Plato. Sorry, that's over your head, man. Can't read that either. Shakespeare, not happening. You're not reading that either. William Byrd, I think his name was. That's another playwright at that time. Can't read him either. Come on now. That's too archaic. See the silliness? They treat, in my opinion, a lot of these guys treat the Bible, the King James Bible, sorry, long day, taking a drink here. They treat the King James Bible as just a book and literature as they would Shakespeare and any other literature, whether it be a book, the book Ulysses or War and Peace or Pride and Prejudice or, can't think of the guy who wrote Ulysses for some reason. Can't think of his name at the moment. But anyways, he wrote several books. But that's how they treat it. What do you want to read? Well, Ironweed's a book that's more recent, or Catcher in the Rye, which I don't think it's a great book at all. But that's how they treat it. They treat it as literature, not the Word of God. And I think that becomes an issue, in my opinion, when you're treating it just as a book. Just a book. Just a book that they can tear apart and try to figure out how to make it different for their own money-grabbing ways. All right, Shepherd, you got that down. Now let's take a look at the capitals here. We got scribes to scribes. Again, I talked about this before. Scribes is capitalized a lot for some reason. Son, up to son. Then, which is interesting, this then was capitalized, but it was not capitalized at the beginning of a sentence or anything like that. Sometimes, then is not supposed. I don't care about the grammar part of it, but some words that I think shouldn't be a start of a sentence, they would start a sentence and capitalize. I don't know why. Disciples, master to master. Again, a physician I talked about, physician to physician, which I don't know why I've always missed it over the years. I've never noticed it. Going through the 1611 and comparing them and stuff like that, I never noticed it until recently. I don't know why I never picked up on it. Apparently, it didn't affect my ability to read. Synagogues, gospel, and the gospel. All right, so now we get to the fun part, as we always do. Scholars, I didn't put in quotation marks. I'm trying to be nicer. 836 words. You got 167 errors. I did put that in quotation marks. For 19.9% errors. 19.9% of Chapter 9 has issues. And again, as we talked about before, really you're looking at 78 errors. And again, not 78 errors, but I'm just trying to use the same approach that a scholar would use. But I'll break it down since they did it. I'll break down multiples. Like Jesus was 10 times. It's really one change, but just 10 times. So it's 78 words that really changed. 78, not 167. That brings you down to 9.3%. Now you go down to the next step, the letter J. The next step is letter J for obvious reasons. We know what happened there. We know the history of that. I've said it a million times. If you look at my other ones, I keep repeating myself, but we know the history of the letter J. So you take away the two issues there, you're down to 76, which leaves you with 9.0%. So now you're at 9%. It's not bad. 9%. You got 9% error issue. Now you go to the next step, was the capital letters. And those changes, as we said before, have no effect on doctrine or readability. So we take out the 9 capitals that don't affect nothing. We're down to 67. That leaves you at 8%. We've now gone from, was it 19.9? Hold on. Yeah, 19.9% down to 8%. Now the next step is what? Phonetics. When you look at the word, you pronounce it the way it looks, and it's absolutely right. So not an issue. When you see meekness, you see meekness. So you take that's 48 times that occurs. That leaves you with 19 letters left. Now, out of those 19, what do you got? 0.022%. Now you move on to the obvious words. You have 2 words. You have 5 words that are left. You have 5 words that are left on this, which leaves you at 0.005%. That's not bad. 0.5%. So your readability issue is actually 0.005%. That's not too shabby. That's not too shabby at all. I think that's fantastic. I'm going to sneeze in a second here, I think. All right. I apologize for that sneeze. But now you have 0.005%. You're at 0.005%. I was going to put 99.5% readability problem, readability. But since I've been putting readability issue, I decided to leave it at 0.005%. That's 0.005% readability issue. And there's no errors in here. There's no word changes in here. You didn't have to worry about any of that. So you go from 0.005%. Let's go back to chapter 8 real quick. 0.014%. So you go 0.014% to 0.005%. Yeah, I think you're not having a problem reading the King James if you take out the obvious. And when I talk about obvious words, like let's go up real quick and then I'll finish this out. We're about 25 minutes in. Let's go up here's one. Shepherd. It's an obvious one. I didn't put this as a phonetic because I think it's not completely phonetic, but it's shepherd. Truly. It's not phonetic, but I can see how somebody might mess it up. Harvest is another one. So there was a few of them in here that I put down. But you would look at them and you'd obviously know right off the bat what it is. All right. So I appreciate your time, everybody. That wraps that up. I think we did pretty well. We got that done in 25 minutes. I tried to keep my monologue down, to keep my talking down and just get straight to the point. But as you can see, if you're reading the King James Bible and people come to you and say, hey, you're not reading the 1611. No, you're not. But yes, you are. Not a huge difference. And I would guarantee you that a large majority of the people who are reading King James Bibles, if they put it down and read the 1611, they do pretty good. If my kids can do it in over 80% and one over 90% consistently, I think adults can pull it off. I really do. We have to, or I don't know about me so much, but we as a whole have to stop letting people intimidate you into thinking, well, you don't have the right Bible. You don't have the right Bible. Why don't you want to make it obvious? Why, why are you old school? Why you have to be old school? Why you? I'll take old school all day long. I'm just saying. Don't be beat down by it. Don't let people get you down over it and make you question and goes, wait, how many errors are there? Don't fall for that. Don't fall for that. Just like the people who fell for the whole COVID numbers and the virus numbers. Don't fall for it. Don't fall for it. Were there issues? Yes. Were there errors? Yes. But not as many as you think. I think the lies of the COVID era from the government are just like the lies of the scholars when they tell you these numbers. The numbers aren't what you think they are. All right, with that, I will say God bless. Appreciate your time. I'm going to go ahead and end this out here. Thank you. I do appreciate your time as always. And with that, I'll tell you, well, before you go, 10 and 11. We got 10 and 11 we'll probably do together. And after that, there's a couple so long we'll have to do them in one video, I think. We'll see what happens. But with that, I said God bless and have a beautiful evening.